In this video I want to show you how you can create this Juno-inspired synth string sound with basically stock plugins inside your DAW. I mean, I'm going to use Ableton Live and their analog synth, but I'm sure you can transfer those settings to basically any other stock synth as well. My name is Yannis. I make videos about, for example, making synth sounds, but also generally making and creating music and having more fun with it. And let's just not waste any further time and jump right into it. There are two main things that you need for creating this sound, and the first thing is a synthesizer plugin. It can basically be anything. And also a chorus plugin, because for this type of sound the chorus is really important, because also the Juno synthesizer had a very charismatic chorus. I didn't manage to get it like 100% close with the stock effect, and I don't think it's possible because there's a reason why this instrument was so popular, but I tried really hard getting close. But let's start with the synth settings. So we need two oscillators, and one of them has a sawtooth wave, like it's initially selected here already. And the other one is going to have a square wave. And also we're going to transpose the second oscillator one octave lower and also reduce a bit the volume. And also let's already bring down the filter to around 400, 500 and increase the resonance a little. So the first time we press the keyboard, it's not going to be this very cold initial sound, and now it sounds like this. I mean, still, it's far from being amazing, but it's a start. Now let's also adjust the envelopes, and here I used exactly the same envelopes for the filter and the amp, so here you have to do it twice. There's no option to link those, would be handy actually. But maybe at your synthesizer there's going to be an option like this and it can save you some time. So for this sound we have some longish attack, around like 0.9 seconds. The decay I made really long, around like 8 seconds, because it also always depends on your synthesizer how the envelopes are sounding, so don't just copy it if you're using another one, because some envelopes are a little steeper, some envelopes actually stay a little more present for a longer time, so you just have to listen what feels good while you play it. Just be known that it's a long decay. And like 0.5 sustain, also that's nice, and we also make the release a little longer, so we have this kind of natural tone that comes after releasing the key. And I have to quickly copy those to the amp setting before I can play it for you. Now we're at this type of sound. And I like it way more because now it opened up a little. There's one thing that is a little annoying to me, which is that the sound reacts too much on velocity. I mean, I want to have a little of it, but not this much. And usually there's a setting for your amplitude envelope that it reacts to your velocity, like how hard you press the key. And I like to have it a little under 1. So let's say it's 0.8 for this example. And also we're going to enhance the reaction to our playing a little through the filter, because there's some option called keyboard tracking, which means that the higher you play on the keyboard, the more the sound opens. And here I usually like to use a value around 0.3. And also here you can set the intensity of the envelope. And here I usually have something around 2.25. So you can see that our sound is a little more mellow now, but also not as aggressive. We can always open the filter more if we feel like it. But I also like to have some foundation that allows me to play with the softer touch, because it's really beautiful for this particular sound. And also here you can add some filter drive. I always like to do it. I just changed it here to Sim 2 because it adds some additional character to your sound. I know it's this kind of vague description, but I always like adding it and never made some bad experiences with it. And here is the setting where you can tell the envelope to react to your velocity though. So if this has some strong setting, it means if I play loud compared to soft, we can really have some impact on the way it sounds through the way we play. But again, I don't like this to be too intense, so I'd probably pick some value around here. Now, I also did some stuff to the second oscillator, and the first thing I most of the time do is to detune it a little. So if we have some notes here, you can create some detune here, but I like to stay a little conservative, just a little, and add some additional modulation through something else, because since we have a square wave, we can use some pulse width modulation. If the width is at 100%, you can hear that the sound is fuller. while when I decrease it, it's thinner, but also has some kind of scratchy quality. I mean, now the oscillator is also a little softer, but I think you can hear the difference. And usually I just browse around those settings. You can also put it on some MIDI controller, so it's a little more organic than with the mouse, but I'll do it this way now and see where I just like it the most. For this particular sound, there really isn't any kind of rule to it. Here it's too thick, and I like a bit of this thin scratch, so I'm gonna leave it here. And also you can modulate this modulation, so the kind of position of this wavetable morphs around a little by applying some LFO. You just have to activate it here, and I like the speed of 1.5 Hertz. And then you go back to your oscillator and you can actually increase this amount. And you get this kind of modulating sound, and this was something you could also do at the Juno, so this is why maybe this particular waveform sounds a little more close to it than if you would just use some standard sawtooth wave for the second oscillator as well. But for the amount I was also somewhere in the middle, like 0.48, something like this. And it's going even more into the direction. But now we come to the point where for the real character we need some chorus, and usually I always try to make a synth sound as good as possible without any effects. But in terms of the Juno, for example, it was just this charismatic because it had this chorus effect. And also if you try some plugins that emulate the Juno, most of the time you'll always use it because it loses so much character without the chorus effect. I don't know about some hardware versions, maybe they don't need it so much, but for example I have this Arturia collection and there's some Juno plugin, and it always sounds better if you enable the chorus. At the same time, I don't often use the Ableton chorus or the stock chorus because it just doesn't give me the sound that I want, but here I tried a little longer and ended up with something that I think works quite nicely. Let's just quickly load some chorus, or in this case it's actually called chorus ensemble. And the ensemble function is also the one that I thought sounds the closest to the sound I was going for, so we're going to pick ensemble. Also a little low cut filter always helps in order to just make the sound a little cleaner, although it's not the most important thing here. Then for the rate, I realized that a slower rate works better, so I ended up at 0.55. We have to increase the amount to maybe 59. Also the feedback can be increased a little. And a little bit of the warmth, although if you give too much of it, it starts distorting a little. So I like to keep it around here. And then it's up to taste where you put the dry wet knob. Because if you want this kind of super chorus driven sound, it can work quite nicely with 100%. But for my taste it's a bit too much. Also there's some fizzling created in the higher register of the sound, which is why I enjoy bringing it back a little, maybe around 60%. And then I always feel like it's great to add a mild bit of saturation. So here in Ableton I use the saturator and the soft sine setting is really mild, just rounding up the sound a little. It makes it just a little more pleasant. And also some EQ. I often see that with software synthesizers they have a low end rumble, or there's just some stuff you don't want, so I usually always put some low cut. And here it also helped to brighten the sound up a little, just tiny things, but making the sound overall just a little more exciting. And if you like this video, there's a whole playlist here with sound design tutorials with stock synthesizers, always Ableton Live, but I'm sure you can transfer a lot of settings if you're using some other DAW. Apart from that, I wish you a lot of inspiration with whatever it is that you create and really hope to see you soon again at this channel. Bye!